All right, guys. Our guest today is a #1 best-selling author, award-winning international speaker, and a leader in the emerging field of functional neurology. He is the founder and clinical director of BrainSAVE Neurology Centre, specialising in helping people with post-concussion syndrome and other chronic neurological conditions. Through personalised brain healing programs, online masterclasses, and immersive brain camps, they are able to quickly get to the root cause of patient symptoms so they can get well and stay well. He has a deep passion for teaching and has presented on a number of international stages and platforms. He is also the author of BrainSAVE, the 6-week plan to heal your brain from concussions, brain injuries, and trauma. Our guest is on a mission to transform healthcare for the 1.1 billion people around the world struggling with brain and mental disorders. So with that, I'd like to welcome onto the show today, Dr. Titus Chiu. Thank you, Titus, for joining us today. I really appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Leslie, for the great introduction.
Titus, it's really a pleasure to have you here today. And I guess Les has told us some of your background, really. What we'd love to do is invite you to share your origin story about yourself and your life, everything that's happened up to this point. Well, maybe not everything, but as much detail as you'd like to go into. And
Sure.
we'd love to hear, as much about your origin story as you'd like to share. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for that, Shaun. Appreciate it. So yeah, just like Leslie said, I'm a #1 bestselling author and functional neurologist, and I specialize in helping high achievers go from surviving to thriving after concussion. And the reason why I'm so passionate about that is because over 20 years ago, I myself was in a really bad car accident. I was living overseas, teaching English actually in Japan at the time. And I was on my way to work, and I was on a scooter and I was driving through traffic, and this car made a left turn and smashed into me, hit me, and I flew off my scooter. I hit the ground. It was really intense. Have you guys ever had the wind knocked out of you?
Mm,
Yeah,
yep.
it's scary. I never had that. That was the first time ever I experienced that. So for those of you watching or listening, having the wind knocked out of you is terrifying, especially if you don't know what's going on. Because I had the wind knocked out of me, but my experience of it was when I hit the ground and I kind of came to, I couldn't breathe. So I thought like I'd punctured a lung, and it was so frightening. Anyways, after a bit of time, I kind of caught my breath and realized, okay, like I'm all right. Like at least like my lungs aren't punctured. But through that whole experience, I ended up breaking 3 ribs, dislocated my shoulder, and had road rash and suffered a concussion. And so fast forward, several months later, I was still struggling. Even though I survived, I was struggling with a lot of different symptoms like chronic pain, neck pain. I'd have these vertigo events. For those of you, again, who don't know what vertigo is, it's this experience that you're moving when you're actually not moving. It's, again, that can be terrifying in and of itself. And I had no idea why I had some of these symptoms. I knew about the neck pain and the shoulder pains because, yeah, I was in a car accident. But I started to develop these stranger neurological or brain symptoms. And I had no idea why. And I saw everywhere within conventional medicine to find answers. And I was just shocked that there were none, right? None that were lasting or none that didn't come with a bunch of side effects. So I decided to go outside the box, and I actually went back to school. I got a postdoc in clinical neurology and master's in nutrition. I studied chiropractic and acupuncture and Chinese medicine, anything I could get my hands on to figure out what was going on with me. And so I can also bring that, heal my brain, but also take that and share it with my patients and now with the rest of the world. So fast forward, many years later, that's, my, so to speak, origin story. And that's why I'm so passionate about what I do, because I've been through it, the concussion and the fallout from the post-concussion syndrome. And I know how it is. And unfortunately, based on my own personal experience, based on the thousands of patients I work with for over 14 years, right, there's a massive gap in the current healthcare system when it comes to people who struggle with concussion. And so that's why I'm so passionate seeing patients both in person, also remote online. I see patients from all over the world, but also I've been teaching people, creating courses and writing books just to empower people, to at least get the foundational information that for me is very basic, but when you look at the perspective within conventional medicine, it's just like cutting edge things that, sometimes simple things that people can do to really begin the healing process.
Mhm.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for sharing, Dr. Titus. And I think that, look, we'll definitely jump into some of the, meat and bones of what you do, and I'd love to, talk a little bit more about that for sure. Just from personal interest and things like this, also. But
Sure.
I'd also want to start, and I usually like to do this, maybe going a little bit further back, and we'd love to hear maybe about, what life was like pre the accident,
Oh yeah. Yeah,
what
it's
was it
really
like for
interesting.
you?
Sure. Also, yeah, what did you say? Also, like what?
No, sorry, I was just going to say, look, what was like pre the accident, and, what was your experience of life and how it might have changed post accident and things like this?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's really fascinating because now, in retrospect, definitely not at the time, right? When after the car accident, when I was dealing with the pain and I was dealing with all these brain symptoms, it was a nightmare, right? But in retrospect, I can say honestly, that car accident was probably one of the best things that ever happened to me because it launched me on this trajectory, not only of really understanding myself and healing my brain and be able to help people, but it really changed the direction of my life because when I look back, I came from a really, yeah, a pretty, a great family. I came from a great family, had a great upbringing. I had in retrospect, when I think back now, I had a few health issues then, just kind of like little things, but nothing to really write home about or go to a doctor for, right? I had some brain fog here and there. I didn't have a very strong immune system, so I got sick a lot. But it was just kind of like I was able to manage, and so for the most part, life was pretty normal. But honestly, especially it's really interesting because, um, especially after that car accident, like the neurological symptoms didn't develop overnight. I had a lot of chronic pain and you know um, neck pain and whatnot. So it's just kind of still going through my life and my everyday life. And to tell you the truth, back then, when I say I had a pretty normal life, I had a lot of addictions that I wasn't even really acknowledging or aware of. When I look back again in retrospect, it's like part of it was like trying to self-medicate from some of the symptoms after the car accident. But even before that, I was just a regular guy. I like to party, I like to hang out. But it was just like, knowing now what I know now compared to then, it was just like I was on this trajectory, even outside without a car accident, really not following my what I believe to be my true path. And so in some ways, metaphorically, I look back at that car accident again as this like wake up call from the universe, just like, hey man, you gotta change things up or you're gonna end up in a really bad place. And so it was like this really interesting. Again, I grew up, great family, household, but as I went through life, struggled with most things people struggle with, like self-esteem issues and insecurities. And I found I chose not the best strategies to handle those things. But I think after the car accident, parts of my nervous system, even more so, weren't able to handle those stressors, right? And so then I just really hit rock bottom a few years after the car accident. But again, when I look back at it all, it's just like, oh my God, in many ways, I'm so glad that that happened to me because it completely changed the trajectory of my life, not only professionally, but I really think personally. Like there was some deep soul work that I had to do after that car accident.
Yeah, so many commonalities to your story that I can, that really resonate with me, mate.
Awesome.
A lot of our guests that come on, they will tell us about some turning point, some catalytic moment, that sparked some sort of, inquiry as to what they are doing, and a
exactly. That's a great
reflection.
way to put it. Yeah, the inquiry is just like,
Yeah.
what and why, like how?
Mm.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Awesome.
the listeners of this podcast will know that, my personal one as well, like in 2013, I was diagnosed with cancer, and that was my wake-up call,
Wow.
just like yours. And I would maybe make an assumption that that the same way as perhaps you would have, like, I always say that if it wasn't for cancer, I would have continued down
Right.
the self-destructive route that I was, moving through. And it's so interesting that you sort of speak about, these, general symptoms that everyone, that is, quote unquote, pretty normal will go through and experience in their lives, and find ways to sort of deal with or cope, essentially, find some sort of personal coping mechanism, and think that this is how life is supposed to be. But it's so funny, once you lift that lid, once you are sort of pointed in the right direction through whatever, catalyst that occurs in your life, that it's absolutely not. Like, brain fog is a beautiful example. I had exactly the same. I thought it was just normal to be tired all the time, but it is completely not the case. So yeah, I'd love for you to talk more about that, and that sort of moving through, and that realization for yourself, and how that came to be, and what you can enlighten our guests with as well, with that sort of path.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great question, and it's really fascinating because I kind of look at this again, looking back where I'm at now in my journey, which is always continuous, right? There's like there was these stages in my life where, yeah, like I mentioned before, I had these, nagging health issues, but it was nothing like that. If I went to a doctor, especially like a conventional doctor, they'd be like, "Ah, you're fine. Come back when something's wrong." Right? Those are some of the most dangerous words in medicine today, because what I know now is health is a spectrum, right? It's not like either you are optimally healthy, like the pinnacle of health, or you're dead. There's so much gray area. And that's what we talk about in terms of functional neurology. It's like, what is like the spectrum, right? In conventional medicine, don't get me wrong, I think like emergency medicine, like heroic medicine. Just the other night, honestly, we were in the ER due to some serious food poisoning. I thank those doctors for really helping my wife do that, right? So don't get me wrong, for those emergency crisis situations, conventional medicine rocks, right? But the majority of people in our society today don't struggle with that stuff, thank God, right? Mainly it's these chronic debilitating diseases that build over time. Did you know something like Alzheimer's doesn't happen overnight? It takes 2 to 3 decades to develop, right? So to me, that's actually very empowering, because then if we can catch it early, there's so much we can do before it gets to a point of no return, right? But even then, a lot of the cutting edge research that me and my colleagues are really looking at, there is even hope for that in those situations, right? But my point is, the longer you let that fire simmer, right? With the analogy, what is that? The frog in the boil, like the simmering water, right? The longer you let that simmer, then it's just like the harder it is to get out of that situation. So that was the case for me. It was like growing up, I had, acne, I had skin issues, like really sensitive. Like, for example, I'd scratch my face by mistake and all of a sudden it'd like welt up. I'd be like, what is wrong with me? It's just, or I'd get sick all the time. I get, multiple times a year, I just get sick out of nowhere. And I felt like so weak, like I had this weak immune system. But just like you, Leslie, I chalked it up, it's just Titus, And so it was really interesting because after that car accident, right, it wasn't like I'm like, okay, I need to reevaluate my life now. It didn't happen like that. It was like after the car accident, I went back to school, right, like I told you, and I learned all this amazing things. And along the way, like really cutting edge stuff in healthcare. And I applied them to my own life, right? I applied them to my health, experimented, and then I shared it with my patients as well. And I found that some of the basic things that I did, like basic lifestyle changes or diet or supplements, those nagging health issues I had for the majority of my life, like the getting sick all the time, the skin issues, like the low energy, they just melted away, right? I was blown away. I was like, oh my goodness, this stuff works, right? But it was interesting because I kind of alluded to this, right? When I first had that car accident, the biggest, most glaring symptoms that I needed to get a handle on that was most pressing to me was the pain, right? I had this chronic pain. And so that's like, okay, that's what I need to take care of. And yeah, thank God I found the right people, right? My brother was actually a chiropractor at the time. I saw him after a few sessions, a lot of that pain disappeared, right? And so, but through that, it was really fascinating. When I was in school, like I was learning all this stuff and I was applying it, and these little nagging symptoms went away. But then I started to develop these deeper, darker psychological and neurological symptoms. Kind of, I didn't really mention that in this so far, but I started to develop like worry, like extreme worry, where I just perseverate on things that can go wrong. Obviously, we all have what's known as a negativity bias, where we're always looking at the bad versus the good. But for me, it was just like, and I had that before, but it was just out of control, right? To the point of even like paranoia or like anger issues, like explosive anger that I couldn't get a handle on, happening more and more often. And like I said to you guys earlier, I came from a really like loving family. Obviously, all families have right, stuff you need to work through as part of our soul work. But I came from a really solid family. And I'm just like, I didn't have those issues. Right. And then I start to develop these stronger neurological symptoms like the vertigo and like the sound sensitivity, sometimes light sensitivity, which is very common in concussion. But I didn't know that at the time. Right. And I was just like, what is going on? And so around that time, when these things are happening, like I would, maybe a bit before that time, right? Maybe I'd say about a year before these symptoms started to develop, I had these patients who like a group of patients who were not responding to the usual treatment protocols, right? And the stuff that I was doing was really pretty cutting edge. Like it was just like I applied the protocols that worked for the majority of other people, but they weren't getting better. And I'm just like, what is going on here? And so I took a deeper dive exploring their history, and I started to see this pattern. A lot of them had a history of a head injury, right? And I'm just like, what? So then at that point, I'm just like, okay, the tools I currently have in my tool, even all the studies that I did weren't able to help them. So I took a deeper dive into the world of concussion, right? And I went to like specialized conferences. I read books on it and scientific articles, anything, again, I could get my hands on to help these patients. And when I applied those things, they started to get better, right? And like I told you guys before, not only it's like I want to learn it intellectually, but I want to embody it. So I started to experiment with some of those treatments. And guess what? A lot of those darker symptoms that I just described, this more serious neurological ones and the psychological, those started to clear. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm pretty sure I had a massive concussion that I just had no idea about. You following me? Right. And so it was just like this light bulb went off. I'm like, oh my goodness. And so from there, it was just like another like leap in my consciousness, and then working on that stuff. And like from there, that's when like the deeper healing happened. Not only just in terms of like the treatments and stuff, but also, yeah, when the darker stuff came up in this healing, I really had to confront those things. I think they're already there, but when you have a concussion or your brain's not working, like you have brain fog and stuff, and this area we call your prefrontal cortex that sits at the front part of your brain, what we call a prefrontal cortex, right behind your forehead. That area of our nervous system is really important to give us discernment and self-awareness, right? And judgment. Not necessarily judgment in a bad way, just becoming aware. Like when you have a concussion, that's one of the areas that can just kind of go south, right? And so that being said, it's just like when I started to apply all these things And, a lot of these, I think, yeah, like I said earlier, these insecurities or whatever that I probably would have struggled with my entire life, they came to a head, right? But I didn't have the brain power to process them. So it was just like I had to deal with them. So in addition to like the actual physical treatments, the advanced technologies and stuff, that I do for my patients, I applied to myself. I had to do a lot of deep soul searching, right? Actually work through the psychological, emotional components of my healing. So yeah, I think that, I'm not sure if that answered your question, but yeah, it was like this entire, journey of discovery for me. But yeah, kind of going back to your original question, again, it's like this spectrum, right? Whereas now with how I understand health, it's like you don't, yeah, for example, like things like any type of degenerative issue, like things like cancer doesn't necessarily happen overnight, right? It builds over time. Or things like heart disease or stroke, or even like Alzheimer's disease, all that stuff, it happens over time. And so based on my training, based on my personal life experiences, I've discovered ways of finding it before it gets out of hand, right? And preventive medicine in terms of these wellness practices. But again, I've learned to have more compassion for myself and my patients. It's hard in those situations. If it isn't a crisis, it's hard to be like, hey, am I sleeping enough? Or it's hard, am I exercising? Or does diet even influence me? I don't even want to know about that, right? So it's hard when you're the frog and things are just kind of simmering. But what I've learned, it's like the sooner you can address those things, even if they're, small issues or small symptoms, not only, in terms of long-term prevention, like not only the sooner you address those things, the more powerfully you can decrease risk factors, but more importantly, it's like the more you can really step into what we're here for, right? I firmly believe like health is wealth. And the interesting thing is, a lot of my work is based on this concept of neuroplasticity, the brain's amazing ability to restructure itself. It's like its shape, like the connectivity. But when you do that, you can literally rewire your brain and your life and the way you perceive things, the way you perceive yourself and mindset stuff. All that works through neuroplasticity. My point is, what I discovered, the same principles of neuroplasticity that I use to heal my brain from concussion, it's the same thing that takes a healthy person to a whole new level, right? In terms of like living, fulfilling your life's mission, so to speak. So that's the thing. It's like, even if, you're not struggling with these serious health issues, it's like by learning these principles, if you're already pretty healthy, you can take your life to a whole new level. And that was my experience, except I had to kind of go through the gates of Hades and whatnot to get there. But it was just kind of like, if I imagine like like a journey, like I was going through life kind of mediocre, kind of getting by, nothing too outrageous, out of the ordinary. Then, so I was at this one level of functioning, right, in the world. And then bam, that car accident. So I was like in the depths of it and crisis and all that, and dealing with that, right? Hitting rock bottom. But then when I was able to heal my brain, I got back to that level that I was previous to the accident, but a little bit better. And I'm like, wait a second, this neuroplasticity, all the research that I've done, it's the exact same process that happens for us to, like those whole ideas of visualization and creating your future realities. That's all neuroplasticity. So I've been using the same principles and actions and strategies to take now my healthy brain, after healing from that, to the next level, right? And that's what I mean. It's like, so I acknowledge I'm at where I'm at right now in my journey, and I'm just excited for, the next phase of what's to come. Knock on wood.
It sounds like an amazing, amazing journey. And, I'm thinking of that quote where it's like, when you reach paradise, its roots are in hell.
Yeah, right.
And it sounds like that's been your experience. And as mentioned before, so many people that we speak to on the podcast and who share their stories with us, they have these moments where they've hit this rock bottom or had this catalytic event. And, you also you also spoke about the fact that, you know, you're just going like normal, but then you had your event, it was down. But then when you came back up, you're a bit better, and you noticed that, and now you can go to that next level. And you mentioned something really interesting with the neuroplasticity, which piqued my interest, which was, you know, you mentioned visualization and those things that we can use to improve our life, but that they're actually neuroplasticity, right? And I feel like we all hear about these different concepts and things, and we know about them like in theory, I guess, right? Which is, if we visualize, we can build a better future. But I feel that there's this link in between, which people don't really talk about, which I don't know enough about for sure, which I feel maybe you could enlighten us and the audience about. And I found it really interesting the way you linked those things, which I guess are softer, more maybe ethereal things, to neuroplasticity, which when I think of neuroplasticity, it's an actual physical event, right? Of your brain changing.
Oh, yeah.
So would you be able to talk more about that and how those things are linked?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great question. And so just to kind of step back for a second to give everyone like the framework. So our brain is made up of billions of different cells, right? And there's these communication pathways within our brain we call neural networks. It's like, for example, right now, we're kind of like a neural network. You guys are across the world, but we're able to communicate, you know, for a common purpose, as an example. So these neural networks, they form the foundation for all of our experiences and all of our ability to function in this world. There are neural networks for joy. There are neural networks for gratitude. There's neural networks for things like, visualization, as an example, when they're working, right? But when they're not, you can experience things like brain fog or depression, or you can experience all the symptoms that I had, you know, after my concussion. So those neural networks are what allows us to hold that visualization of what we want, for example, in our lives. So then the question goes, right? Then, well, why, Dr. Chiu? I have all these visualizations. Why is not my life optimal? Like in what I'm saying. So number one, there's a lot of reasons for that. Number one, it could be that the actual mechanics, the neural networks, need some strengthening, right? Pure and simple. Like I said, one of the key areas of the nervous system that's important for visualization is this area we call the prefrontal cortex. So we could visualize till the cows come home, but if that area is not working well, or if you have inflammation from like a food sensitivity or toxins or too much stress, guess what? You're not going to allow that organ of visualization and attraction and manifestation to work. It's that simple. So that's what I mean. It's like all the different things that I did in my life to heal from my concussion. One of the areas that I did heal was the prefrontal cortex. By the way, I'm still working on that one, right? We're all works in progress, but I was able to heal that to a great degree. And so what does that mean, for example? So at one point when I was healing from my concussion, my prefrontal cortex was so bad, I couldn't focus on much of anything, right? And everyone said, oh, just try meditation. I tried meditation and it didn't work. I felt worse. I was like, my mind was all over the place. I'm like, this doesn't work. It wasn't that meditation didn't work. It was because my prefrontal cortex that does the heavy lifting while you meditate, it wasn't in a good shape, right? So that's my point. It's like, so when I did things like diet changes, personalized supplements, brain training technologies, right? When I did these physical things and shifted my neurochemistry, then my prefrontal cortex started to engage and get back online. Then when I started to do things like visualization, then those things started happening more. You following me?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then like follow through. Another function of the prefrontal cortex is its action in the world, right? The frontal lobe in general, it's like taking action. But how many of you out there, maybe you guys, or how many of the listeners have a great idea, take action, and then there's no follow through, right? So a big part of the follow through also prefrontal cortex is that grit, that resilience to keep going, right? As an example. So that's one thing, right? So the more, you know, and neuroplasticity then is this phenomenon when we talk about like visualizing or setting a goal and moving towards it. If we're not good at that, you can just continue to work on it. Guess what? Those areas become stronger over time. So that's what actually happens. Neuroplasticity, what's actually happening, there are physical changes happening within your brain. Remember the neural networks I was describing earlier? It's like these communication pathways. Imagine like telephone wires, like connecting, one house to another or whatever. The cool thing is, different than telephone wires, your brain has the ability to either lengthen the telephone wires, increase the amount of connections between the telephone wires so the signal gets better, or even like, believe it or not, there's a thing called neurogenesis where you can grow new brain cells. So you can actually build completely new telephone wires and, receivers, so to speak. So that's actually what neuroplasticity is. It's a scientific fact. It was, discovered many years ago, actually. There's some first evidence back in, I think over 200 years ago by an Italian neuroanatomist. Anyways, like it's just this burgeoning field that we can use like these principles and strategies to not only help people struggling with health issues, but also help, like I said, a healthy person take their life to the next level. And the cool thing is it's not just like a philosophy or even a scientific theory. There are actions that you can take intentionally to increase neuroplasticity. And depending on what you're trying to accomplish, you can be really intentional about it. So as an example, most people, when you think about like sports as an example, right? So you heard that saying muscle memory, right? Have you guys heard of that muscle memory? Like if you practice like martial arts or you practice basketball or baseball, the more you do it, you develop that quote unquote muscle memory. That's actually a misnomer. It's not your muscles that are remembering. It's a neural network related to your frontal lobe, your basal ganglia, and your cerebellum, right? So my point is, and if you actually look at some of the best athletes out there, and I've actually worked with some of top athletes in the world, like Olympic champions, right? But if you look at some of the best athletes out there, they're not just training their bodies anymore. Like the top, for example, like Steph Curry, one of the best top basketball players in the world. If you check him out, his trainer does a lot of the neuroplasticity stuff because they're starting to understand that it's not just the body, right? But you want to train the brain as well. So, but my point is, for example, depending on what your goal is, so if it's better athletic performance, there's specific neural networks that you can train to help you do that. For example, I've worked with some top hockey players in the world and some martial artists. Like, for example, when it comes to like sports, right? It's all about reaction time, right? It's also obviously strength. That's kind of like the old thinking. Strength is important, but it's about reaction time, coordination, balance, right? So I found one area that I find even some of the top athletes in the world that have weaknesses in is their hand-eye coordination or their eye. So for example, right, if you're trying to shoot a basketball into a net, right, or into the hoop, you have to be able to target that. In order to target that, your eyes have to calibrate precisely where the basket is in relation to your body. Like all this stuff happens behind the scenes. My point is, if someone's trying to improve their basketball game or their hockey game or sports performance, I could perform a neurological evaluation, identify the weak links in their neural networks, for example, maybe the areas of the brain that control the eyes in coordination, and give them specific personalized exercises to rewire those areas of their brain. So maybe it might look like specific eye movement exercises, like personalized to them, specific types of body movements. We might use lights and sounds, different types of sensory-based like activations, because what all that does, Shaun and Leslie, it travels along very specific nerve pathways to the specific neural network that you're trying to strengthen. You see what I mean? So depending on what your goal is, whether it's athletic performance, maybe you are, like an entrepreneur and you want to have like better vision and follow through or better organizational skills. You can either hire or delegate that out, or you can train your brain to at least be better at it. Does that make sense? And so that's the cool thing is once you have that goal, and that's what I always do with my clients and patients. First question is, what is your number one health goal? Or what is your goal? And then from there, so I say, I want to be able to, I want to be able to juggle my business better. Or I want to be able to take care of my kids, and also follow, my career as well, be able to juggle all these different things. There are specific neural networks that allows a person to do that. So then I'm like, okay, let's figure out where the weak links are in your nervous system. And let's put together a plan for you that revolves around diet, around supplements, personalized supplements, nootropics. But in addition to that, there's specific brain training exercise we can do to target those areas of their nervous system that allow them to have better focus and concentration and follow through, right? That allow them to be better athletes, better parents, right? So neuroplasticity, man, it's the basis of my life's work. I love it.
Yeah, it's amazing. What I'm really hearing you say, which is, and you put it in a way that has made it clear for me anyway, is it's like doing reps with your brain, not like for your brain, but with your brain. And it makes me think of how, anyone exercises just generally any other muscle in their body for a future benefit. It sounds exactly the same.
I love that. I love, exactly. You got it. And I use that a lot. The analogy is it's like personal training for your brain. And right with the analogy of the physical body, if you're trying to get stronger and be faster and have like more tone or bigger muscles, not only can you do exercises, but if they're personalized to you, you accelerate that. But in addition, right, as you probably know, if you also focus on the chemistry, the nutrition, right? So if you focus on creating the best environment for your body to build muscles, to be more toned, same thing goes for your brain. There's specific compounds that have been shown to activate what's known as BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It's like miracle grow for your brain. It's a protein, it's a growth factor that you actually produce that's really important to create that neuroplasticity, right? So in addition to brain training exercise, like I described, like eye exercises, specialized movements, light sounds, all that stuff, we can then do things to trigger the BDNF. So then when a person does do the reps, like you're saying, does do the exercises, then it can take hold much more powerfully, right? Whereas I find a lot of people, again, it's like if they try visualization, they try meditation, it might help them, but if their brain is inflamed, if they have a deficiency of omega-3 fatty acids, especially docosahexaenoic acid, DHA, the neuroplasticity won't take hold, right? Or if they have a gut infection, like a lot of research is looking at the gut-brain connection. That was actually one of the things I did to heal my brain. Like I healed my gut and it took it to the next level. My point is there's specific intentional things we can do to create the best environment for neuroplasticity to happen. What does that mean? For things to help you achieve your highest goals, right? Yeah, this stuff is so cool because once you personalize it, bam, you can take it to a whole new level.
And what I'm hearing you say, Titus, really like what I think about, and I relate it back to, I guess what I do. I teach meditation, and it's one of those things that is very hit and miss. And I do hear a lot of people come back and say, it doesn't work. I've tried it and it doesn't work. And I'm like, how long did you try it for? I tried it for a couple of days, for 5 minutes, and it just didn't work. Things like this. And it sort of relates to similar things, all these very, the availability of all these new ways and methods to heal or enhance performance, or how-tos and quick fixes and things like this. I think that like what you're saying is like, it's not so much that these things don't work, but they're more of a sign that something like foundationally needs to be addressed first.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I love meditation, like I told you before, when I was like struggling and my brain was inflamed and I was just not in a good place, it didn't work. And I can speak to that as well as I'm sure you can, right? What work actually means. But for this, this kind of train of thought, once my brain was in a better place, I felt the benefits a lot faster. But I also believe that sometimes it's just great to show up, right? Isn't that one of the points of meditation, is just showing up, whatever you're dealing with in life, and being there present to that. So there's definitely that. But when I say meditation, I'm kind of speaking more to an actual brain training neuroplasticity exercise, right? And the cool thing is, there all the different meditations out there, they actually activate different regions of your brain. So I actually recommend meditation for my patients as well, based on number one, like the integrity of their prefrontal cortex as an example. But then number two, do we want to activate the right hemisphere of their brain versus the left hemisphere? So as an example, when you practice a meditation like Vipassana, right, where you focus on the breath and the movement of your body, you activate more specifically the right hemisphere of your brain. And so if that's the weak link for you, guess what? It'll be like, man, Leslie, I did that meditation you recommended. Oh my God, my life has changed, right? But if the person has already a strong right hemisphere, and I see a lot of patients who actually have an overactive right hemisphere, when they try Vipassana, they fall apart. They're just like, oh my God, it's overwhelming. I feel anxious. So then I give them, I suggest a meditation that deals more with the left hemisphere. So something like a mantra or a word or a number, right? There's different types of meditations that activates, guess what? The left hemisphere. So then we could even personalize it for them. Again, speaking to meditation as a brain training neuroplasticity activity. But right, when we talk about also what we said earlier, that does not take away from just the benefits of just showing up and being present with whatever state you are in. That in of itself is just, that's the deeper healing stuff, right? But yeah, it's just so fascinating how, that's one of my passions, is really exploring these more esoteric things that, people have been doing for thousands of years, like meditation and chanting and, like using food and nature as medicine, and then analyzing and understanding it through a neurological framework, because it's just fun for me to do that. And it's like, I love the spirituality and all of that and the neuroscience, but it also for my patients, my clients, so I can then personalize whatever they're up to, to help them achieve their health goal. Yeah, it's really fascinating stuff.
But I also feel like it's like a upcoming trend of thought anyway, right? And I think that you touched on it a bit earlier in terms of just relying on conventional Western medicine is becoming we're starting to understand that it's a bit archaic, that we simply rely on this train of thought and this train of thought only. And I love that you sort of mentioned, throughout your journey, you explored a little bit of everything, whether it was, TCM or Chiro or whatever it was. And I feel like it is so important to encompass that whole harmonistic way of thinking and trying. And like, it's sort of a little bit naive that we overlook these ancient ways that have worked for so many millennia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point you bring up, Leslie, because I look at it, it's not like these things don't work. It's like the science is outdated. It needs to catch up to the phenomenology, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's the thing, is like, as science starts to get to a place of understanding, then they're like, oh, that's how meditation works. When the neural network, the part of your brain related to compassion, is actually this area we call the insular cortex and anterior cingulate. When someone meditates, guess what happens? You exercise those areas, right? And that's one of the, in some traditions, like the purpose of meditation is to develop empathy and compassion, right? And so I just love the intersection of that, I love how you say it's like looking at it holistically, because it's like, we don't have to choose either or. It's like, I love looking at things holistically. And, as an example, looking at my patients and my clients holistically, not just as a brain or as an adrenal gland or a gut, but looking at all the other influences in their life that impact their expression of themselves, right? But then looking at holistically, but now that we have this deeper scientific understanding, we can also apply that thinking to the holistic framework. So it's like this reductionist approach, scientific method, and we know all the biochemical pathways and all the neural networks, right? And all the different things, but then within this, the details, so to speak, but when it's within this bigger holistic framework, that's right, the integration, the marriage of the left brain and the right brain, the yin and the yang, right? The male and the female, so to speak. Yeah, I love the fact that you brought that up, because that's so important. I don't even think just related to healthcare, but honestly, for the probably survival of humanity, we need some type of coming together. Because in my humble opinion, in the yin yang model, so to speak, I think we and the left right brain model, I think this world has gone way far too left brain, right? Way too, and we need this kind of coming back to like the feminine, the sacred, and then integrating. Because honestly, I think that's the only chance we have for survival. Anyways, a bit off topic, but it all connects.
No, I totally agree with you on that point for sure. I totally agree with you there.
Yeah, and it's this intersection that I find really interesting, which is emerging now. And I don't know, maybe it's just because people are able to share their stories more now that we're able to hear more stories, but we hear about, stories like yours, Dr. Titus, where you had these, what sound like incredibly difficult physical symptoms that affected you mentally as well, right? And the other way around. I can't imagine you feeling paranoid and feeling okay in your body either, right?
Yeah, it's all connected. You're right. Absolutely.
And I feel like, I remember when I was younger, like a lot younger as a child, you'd hear about people having accidents and then that was it. That was it for them. Like they're done. See you later. Like this thing, really bad thing happened and this is your lot in life now. Whereas nowadays we're hearing stories like yours, where you've been able to identify very specific causes to your problems and then work out solutions and enact them yourself, right? And I feel like there's this intersection which has allowed that to happen, and people are learning more about that, and things that you're teaching are empowering people to do those things on their own. Because I feel the other thing that happens with Western medicine, and I guess like if you want to call it that, emergency medicine, it's like there's this issue now, patch it up and hopefully you're good to go, and things might get better over time. Whereas what you're talking about is really finding the foundation of issues, moving through and working on that. And I feel like there's so many frameworks out there now for us to work on that. And we hear stories like Dr. Joe Dispenza, how he healed himself, and he had his back injury and was able to use different modalities to heal himself too. So I want to get because you deal with people and help them through these things all the time. Is it this intersection you think that's helped this happen? Or is it like usually you'll find one thing and then it will just lead to that next, like someone's really mentally good but physically bad, or really physically bad, and then you have to make them come around? Or is it always the two together and being able to meld them?
Yeah, I love that question. And, one thing that I discovered over the years, healing my own brain and working with thousands of patients, is what I call the 3 pillars of brain health: the physical brain, chemical brain, and the emotional brain. And what I've learned is to really heal like your nervous system, or to really, like what we said, for healthy people to take, their life to the next level, we need to look at it holistically. And so, when I work with clients, it's kind of like I go through this process and like investigative process, like I'm a health detective, right? So I'm like, okay, this person's coming with physical symptoms, but then I do a workup, I talk to them, I really understand their story, right? I grok, their situation. I'm like, whoa, I think a big part of your physical symptoms are due to this stress that you're not getting a handle on, right? And so for them, we'll focus more on different things that help offload stress, right? Whereas I might have the opposite, just like you're saying. So I might have someone who has mental, emotional symptoms, like what I was struggling with, in addition to physical, but mental, emotional symptoms. And we might find that it's due to some physical thing going on. And that, oh my God, I can't tell you, Shaun, like when I work with patients who struggle, for example, with anxiety or something, like they feel so validated for the first time in their life, because when people struggle with, it's like you have a broken shoulder. It's like everyone can see it. It's like, oh yeah, that's why you're in pain, right? But the neurological, the psychological, that's hidden for the most part. And so I can't tell you how many times when I work with, a client who might have developed anxiety after concussion or just has anxiety, and they're like, oh my, after I do a workup, I'm like, you know what? I think the number one root cause for you, right, for your anxiety is because you have an issue, an imbalance in your vestibular system, something physical, or you have an imbalance in your digestive system, what we call dysbiosis, right? And so they're like, oh my God, thank you. You know, it's like, you know, for the first time, you just acknowledged what's going on with me, but you also showed me like this physical reason why, you know, I'm struggling with these things. And even there, if that was just kind of like the end of the conversation and the relationship, they had a lot of that, you know, but then from there, I'm just like, okay, now we've identified the physical root causes for your mental emotional symptoms. Here's the steps to take to help balance your vestibular system. Here's the exercise. Here's the supplements and the diet specific to your gut health, right? And again, by the way, it has to all be personalized, but I'm just using that as an example. You're absolutely right. It's all connected. And so whenever I work with patients and clients, I walk them through this process where I figure out what is of the three pillars: physical, right? The actual neural networks, the chemical, like the terrain, the biochemical environment, or the emotional, like the stress and the mindset and the beliefs. Which of those pillars is most relevant for them? Because typically what I'll find is, you know, if they're, for example, struggling with a health challenge, they've put a lot of energy into like the chemical brain, as an example. And that's what most people do, because we're just, conventional medicine is so biased towards chemistry, because it's like, what do we have as tools? Like medications. That influences your chemistry. It doesn't really address the emotional and the physical, like long-term, but it shifts the chemistry, right? But so do supplements, and so does diet. So a lot of times I have a patient come in to me and they'll be like, they've done so much work and they're just like removing all the foods and they have nothing left to eat and they're taking all the supplements and they're still struggling. And then I'm like, you know what? I think this is, you know, rooted in this neural network, your physical brain. And if we just apply a little bit of energy there, boom, sometimes we see this massive shift, right? Obviously, it takes time. Everyone's unique. But I found that looking at it like that holistically, figuring out where a person is in their process, right? And then putting the energy in those areas, then since it's all connected, right? This three pillars thing, it's a framework, it's, you know, that I've discovered, and so to speak, and it's a good way of understanding things, but at the end of the day, it's still all connected. So sometimes, yeah, when we do things in the physical brain, like the brain training or exercises, vagal nerve stimulation, we see massive change biochemically or emotionally, right? So it has to be personalized based on what that person needs. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's, you know, answer your question, it is, you know, it is looking at it holistically, but also paying attention to where that person is in their process. In general, though, I'll have to say, I find at least most people that, you know, reach out and that I work with, reach out to our team, I find that starting with the physical and the chemical, like really getting a firm stronghold there, those pillars, meaning like brain training or changes in diet or, you know, advanced lab testing. Once we get that, then sometimes, not always, the emotional stuff just falls into place, right? Because then they have the energy, they have the resources in their nervous system, in their body, to then face those things that might be difficult. Again, that was my personal experience when I was doing meditation, kind of doing these things, and my brain was inflamed and my prefrontal cortex was just like gone south and offline. I couldn't do that on my own, right? And so, like I said, that's kind of how I tend to approach it. Like start with the physical or chemical, one of those, really foundationally work on that. And then what's ever left over with the emotional, then we kind of focus on the mindset stuff, or I get them connected to other people who can, you know, really help them with that.
Mm. And what I hear you say, I mean, I love that you said that, you know, there's a process of, you know, paying close attention to certain things, right? And I think that, you know, coming back to something that we were talking about earlier in the conversation, when we were just saying, you know, one of the worst things that could happen in traditional medicine, like, you know, general practitioners and things like this, is just, you know, for people to turn you away and say, oh, you know, come back when there's a quote unquote real issue. And this sort of embeds this way of thinking that we're supposed to live through, tiredness, brain fog, all these, little problems. But to me, if we are able to pay attention to these things, like there's signs of, information from other places, like, skin issues, like eczema, acne, and all these sorts of things. They're not just things that, like, quote unquote, just happen, right? There's a reason why they're happening. If you're bloated all the time, if you're gassy, all these sorts of things, there's always a reason why these things are happening. And there's a way that we can rectify this if only we looked at it from a holistic lens, and, think that, we can, follow the thread, so to speak, to unravel and, rectify the root cause of these issues, and, come back to a more optimal way of living and foundation for us to go wherever we, want to go.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love you brought that point up. It's, there's several, I can totally just talk with you guys for hours, but there's so much to unpack there. But it's like when, I like to use the analogy of like a car, right? When you have a car, you're driving your car, and then when the gas goes out, it's empty. But thank God you have that meter, right? The full to empty, you have a meter to show you along the way. Unfortunately, the meter in conventional medicine, aka a lot of the tests that they do, they're just looking for empty, right? When you're empty, then you come in. But the great thing is, like, a lot of my passion, like natural medicine, it's come a long way. Like, we can use technologies and advanced diagnostics, and we can run lab tests to see, for example, what your omega-3 fatty acid status is before it goes empty, before you develop Alzheimer's or brain fog or all these other symptoms, right? So there's so much we can do to measure and check before it gets empty. Unfortunately, the majority of conventional doctors out there, number one, aren't aware of these tests. Number two, aren't trained to understand, utilize, or interpret the tests, right? And so therefore, they're not able to expand that spectrum for their patients. So then we end up with this, just global health crisis on our hands, right? 1.1 billion people throughout the world struggling with brain health and mental health disorders, right? Where it's tragic to me, honestly, because it's kind of like, me going through it myself. And many times I see my patients going through that, where they're like, it's manageable. I don't really need to do anything at this point. And then I'm like, oh, where you're at, you're kind of like, you're not empty, but you're kind of like 1/4 tank left. So we can ignore it, but I have a feeling if we do, things are going to fall apart and you're going to end up empty. And so some of them listen to that and, decide to take some action. Some don't. And guess what? Usually the ones that don't, I talk to them 3 months, 6 months, a year later, and they've completely tanked, right? And so that's the thing. It's really tragic for me to see that, but also I'm very optimistic because I think a lot of this stuff that I'm talking about, like natural medicine, integrative medicine, functional neurology, functional medicine, it's starting to be more accepted in the mainstream. Why? Because the conventional system does not work for the majority of chronic health issues, right? And so I think a lot of people, especially our age, they're tired of just having to take a medication, right? And our parents' age, maybe that's what they're really inundated with, the propaganda. It's like, chemistry is the answer to everything. We're seeing how much of a failure that is, right? So I think a lot of people our age are more open to these things and exploring them. And I do see a lot of patients who are older who have been completely failed by the system, right? The conventional system. So they're just like, I'm at my rope's end and, I've tried everything. So I'm willing to do anything at this point, right? Again, the good news is there's so much we can do prior to that ever happens.
Absolutely. And I think that, if there's anything to take from the conversation really is that, if we look at, life as more of a journey rather than anything else, then, we'll understand that there are really no shortcuts in anything, especially when it comes to, our physical, mental and spiritual health. And there's always going to be something that we can do to better ourselves in that way. And, like you said, it's beautiful that a lot of things that are becoming more and more known, and we're coming across better understanding of how we can, generally take care of ourselves. And to be honest, a lot of the things will come down to lifestyle for me. That's a huge sort of factor, your environment, what you eat, and how you move. If anything else, if nothing else, if you can't do those things sort of properly, then it's a great basis for you to sort of springboard from to elevate you to whichever walk of life you want to move down. So yeah, I think that's a wonderful place to sort of leave it. Like you said, Dr. Titus, we could chat for hours and hours. But in respect of your time, I think that's a nice place to sort of close off the conversation. But again, it was a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for your time and your wisdom and sharing your knowledge and story with us. I'd love to give you the opportunity to tell our audience where they can find you, mate.
Sure. Yeah. You could check out my website, brainsave.com. And I'm also on Facebook as well as Instagram. And for those of you out there who are struggling with concussion, I do have the #1 best-selling book, BrainSAVE, that you can find as well.
Absolutely. And we'll put all those links in the show notes so people can find all of that quite easily. Shaun, where can people find you, mate?
Yep, easiest place to find me is on Instagram. So just Shaun_Coop, SHAUN_COOP. And also people can find out more of the work we do together, Les, at true-north.co, the website there. And how about you? Where can they find you?
Yep, you can find me on my website, findingspace.co, as well as Instagram and Facebook. It's also at findingspace.co.
And Dr. Titus, I'd like to thank you as well today for your time, being so gracious with us and sharing your knowledge and, really being able to explain in a way that pieces things together. I learned a lot today, and it made me rethink, it made me rethink, that framework. It's super interesting. And, I really hope people will go out and get your book and learn more about your work and see how they can improve their lives. Because I think one thing we talked about a lot was, going from one place to a place of, sorting out an issue. But one thing you mentioned a lot of times, which perhaps we can have you back on sometime to speak about, is this improvement phase, which I can tell you're really passionate about. And once we sort things out, going to the next level is really exciting. So I hope people delve more into your work. And I hope they go to the show notes and see where they can find you and really engage more with you. And thank you so much again for your time. And
absolutely.
Yeah, it's really,
thank you guys. Thanks,
awesome.
Shaun. Thanks, Leslie. Yeah, it's been fantastic. And yeah, I'd love to geek out about that with you guys sometime as well.
For sure. And for the people listening, I'm sure that you got a lot out of this episode, some nuggets. Perhaps there's people experiencing things which Dr. Titus and his knowledge can help with. So please share this episode with one other person. That's how we grow the podcast and get into the ears of the people that can help by hearing it. So until next time, guys.
See you guys.
Ciao.